Fun fact, in the last 2 years, Khamzat Chimaev has said, "See you soon," to every single person that has been crowned champion or ever was champion at the welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight divisions. Everybody from Leon Edwards all the way up to Yuri Prohaska, they have all at some point been called out by Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is somebody I wanted to dedicate a whole video to talking about before the Robert Whitaker fight, because I do believe this might be it. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this will be the end of his career. Absolutely not. I mean, like, at this current rate, we might take another 1.5 year break after really only fighting for less than a round after the Kevin Holland fight. Like, there's absolutely no reason to be taking that long off. And I'll get into what I believe that is, because I don't believe it's all on Hamzat, but a good part is Khamzat Chimaev is going to be fighting Robert Whitaker at UFC Saudi Arabia. And I just want to talk about how I think this is his last chance at becoming a superstar. Khamzat Chimaev, about 1.5 years ago, I would probably say, was one of... Actually, no, I'm going to say it. He was the most exciting prospect that was in the UFC that never had a title. I remember Khamzat Chimaev fans talking about how he was going to become the undisputed GOAT of combat sports. How he was going to become the very first triple champion over 3 different divisions. How he was going to defend each of those titles. I never believed it up to that point. I did believe he was going to become a champion. To put this into perspective for you, Khamzat Chimaev was such a big star, people didn't know that Shavkat Rakhmonov was in the same division. And Shavkat Rakhmonov right now is the most exciting prospect at welterweight. Yeah, Khamzat Chimaev dwarfed him in stardom. And that stardom came from him making the quickest turnaround in modern UFC history. It was a 10-day turnaround, wins his first fight, wins his second fight, easy. Now, were the opponents that good? No. But I mean, like, 10-day turnaround, that's still impressive. And then after that, Gerald Meerschaert gets a win over at Gilbert Burns at 185. So at this point, we know he has power, and we know he can grapple. And then we give him Li Jingliang. He fights Li Jingliang, absolutely mollywops this poor lad, and then calls out a ranked opponent. And he's gifted Gilbert Burns. I'm giving you the history lesson for you guys to understand how crazy this story has gotten. Goes to Gilbert Burns, and a lot of people, this is where I will defend Khamzat Chimaev. People think that this was the fight that fraud checked him because Gilbert Burns was almost able to win. No. Gilbert Burns is an exceptionally difficult person to fight. He is the toughest stylistic matchup for somebody like Khamzat Chimaev. I will give Khamzat Chimaev credit. He took the toughest possible ranked opponent in that division at that time. He could have gotten a Wonder Boy. He could have gotten a Colby Covington. He could have gotten, the amount of fights he could have had. I remember when Masvidal versus Khamzat Chimaev was a fight that was being talked about. That was a fight he could have reasonably gotten, and let's be real here, he would have beaten them. Gilbert Burns was the toughest stylistic matchup. And it is at this point where the fumbling of Khamzat Chimaev's superstardom begins. I say begins because he still has a chance, but this is where it begins. They offer him a number 1 contenders match, which I will say it right now, might be the easiest number 1 contenders match in UFC history. Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. At that point, Nate Diaz was kind of just getting passed around to people that they wanted to build a star for. Leon Edwards is supposed to demolish Nate Diaz. Instead of what happened was Nate Diaz almost beat him in one exchange, and that's all people remember from the fight. So Khamzat Chimaev gets gifted Nate Diaz. Easy number 1 contenders match. He beats that. He gets to fight he gets to beat Kamaru Usman. Doesn't make weight. Misses weight by, wasn't it like 5 pounds? Like 5 to 8 pounds? It was something crazy. Like there was no possible way that you thought you were going to make weight. It was so bad that people still to this day have a conspiracy that they plan to change that entire card from the get-go. Because it actually worked out better. Kevin Holland ended up fighting Khamzat Chimaev, somebody that they had beef in the build-up of that fight. So it was like the storyline was already there. And Tony Ferguson got to fight Nate Diaz, a fight that we've always wanted to see. That card kind of turned out to be meh, if I'm going to be 100% honest with you. But Khamzat Chimaev gets an easy win against Kevin Holland. But at this point was almost banned from welterweight, or so I thought. A year and a half takes place, and he's going all the way up to middleweight against Paulo Costa. This is where the Dana White privilege comes in, and it gets absolutely insane. Khamzat Chimaev is given Paulo Costa, logical fight, for his middleweight ranked debut. That ends up falling out. And the first person they called, I'm not even kidding you, was the new champion of the middleweight division, Sean Strickland, a month and a half after he won the title. This has already been confirmed by Strickland himself and Eric Nixick, his coach and manager. Khamzat Chimaev, I need to stress this. Khamzat Chimaev making his ranked debut in the division, never fought there before in his entire career, aside from Gerald Meersart, which means absolutely nothing, was offered a title shot at the champion on 10 days' notice with a training camp that was preparing him for a striker. Strickland wouldn't have gotten a training camp. He would have gotten 10 days to make it in Abu Dhabi. So, but bro was gifted Abu Dhabi, potentially gifted a championship title shot against the champion who didn't even have a full camp, let alone any camp. At that point, Khamzat Chimaev, the fact that that's been confirmed, that was offered, that might be the craziest amount of Dana White privilege I've ever heard. Okay, they wanted Strickland to pull, they wanted Strickland to pull a Volkanovski. But not everybody's him. So they get Kamaru Usman, making his middleweight debut, and I guarantee you what ended up happening, Ali Abdelaziz saw the potential of Kamaru Usman here, and took a gamble. That's what I think happened. Kamaru Usman's never turned down the fight. That's one reason why Dana White thinks he's the undisputed GOAT of welterweight. You see what I mean. Has a competitive fight with there. That was the unofficial #1 contenders match. I just want to let you know that. And that fight was so much closer than what people thought it was. Kamaru Usman coming off the couch and outstriking Khamzat Chimaev in the third round. That they stopped that from being a #1 contenders match, and they finally let Dricus fight Strickland. Understand, Dricus as well was going through it because Dana White was trying to gaslight us into asking that Dricus du Plessis had to get 2 more fights in. A lot of people forget about that. Dana White wanted Dricus to get in 2 more fights before he fought Strickland. So it would have been, Dricus is a guy who beat Robert Whitaker. He's the first dude to beat Robert Whitaker since Adesanya, and if you rule out Adesanya, Robert Whitaker was undefeated since, I believe it was like 2013, 2017, it was something crazy. They wanted him to fight 2 more times. They wanted him to fight Jared Cannonier and maybe Marvin Vettori, and then they would have given him a title shot. That's how crazy that they were at that time. But seeing that Khamzat Chimaev had a hard time against Kamaru Usman, and I feel like at this time the UFC knows that they want Hamzat to be a superstar, and they don't want to risk him losing a title shot. Because they're aware if he loses a title shot, like, imagine if Sean O'Malley got submitted by Aljamain. Like, the hype would have gone down, and it would be one of the most outrageous crash. It would have been a Darren Till level of crash and burn. So Khamzat Chimaev has to fight another person. Who are they looking for? They said Paulo Costa. They might reschedule Paulo Costa. That was a fight that was being talked about, but Costa wasn't so much interested. Okay, so no Costa. Strickland lost to Dricus. Okay. I shit you not. Okay. Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to be the headliner of UFC Saudi Arabia. Okay? Instead of Hamzat versus Robert Whitaker, it was going to be Hamzat versus Strickland. But what happened? Okay, well, why didn't that happen? Strickland was told by some managers that were working over in Saudi Arabia that they wanted to put a muzzle on him. Okay? They told him that he had to play nice in Saudi Arabia. He couldn't make any jokes there like he did in Canada. And if you know anything about Strickland, you knew that wasn't going to fly. I'm not kidding you. They wanted Strickland to play nice at the press conference against Khamzat Chimaev. Let's get over why that's a problem here. despite what you may believe, Hamzat's not the A side here. It is Strickland. If Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev ever happens, unless Chimaev is the dominant champion, Strickland's going to be the A side because he's going to be the guy that is going to be bringing in the pay-per-views. I've already talked about this. It's not that he has the biggest following, but most of his followings are people that have a MIG welder in their garage and buy the pay-per-views. Sean O'Malley has the opposite issue. Most of them are teenagers that know how to stream it. There's a difference here. People in Abu Dhabi don't really buy a lot of pay-per-views. They buy a lot of arena seating. So Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to fight Strickland. Strickland said no because they wanted to put a gag order on him. And that's how we got Robert Whitaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. That takes us all the way up to the modern day. All that storyline, just to tell you this. If Khamzat Chimaev loses to Robert Whitaker, it is going to be a Darren Till level of crash and burn. Understand that. And I think Robert Whitaker does stand a good chance in this fight. I've already kind of brushed upon how I think this fight's going to go. I think if Khamzat Chimaev wins this, I think he wins by a finish. And I would think that might be more likely. I think Robert Whitaker's getting pretty chinny. I think he's been hit a lot in his career. I think Dricus du Plessis, outside of having like surprisingly good cardio, I might bite my words on this. I don't think Dricus hits crazy hard. Okay? Like, don't get me wrong. It's a fight between two men, of course. Like, some things can happen. I don't think Dricus hits harder than Hamzat does. I think Hamzat does hit harder. And he's been working on a lot of striking. But I can see a scenario where Robert Whitaker takes him off into the 5-round decision and gets a decision win. That is unless some Saudi Arabian judges come in and, you know, we have a Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon robbery. Okay? Like, I'm saying watch Saudi Arabia because that's going to be a very interesting decision if it goes there. Like, I'm kind of surprised if Robert Whitaker does win by a decision. But if he wins, it's all the upside. The UFC has a storyline that they can build for Khamzat Chimaev. Dricus du Plessis is going to be fighting Adesanya at UFC 305 in Perth, Australia. That's 2 months after that. I like that. Strickland's fighting at the beginning of that month. They are creating a scenario where they have multiple number one contenders that can get in there. The UFC loves doing this. That's what they were doing Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan and Dustin Poirier. That's what they were doing there. They want multiple number one contenders. That way, if one person doesn't want to fight, they could pick somebody else. Because I'm telling you this right now. If Adesanya beats Dricus, they already have a date picked out for when that fight's going to be. I think it's going to be UFC 309. That's the date. Adesanya has already let us in on what he wants to do. Adesanya plans on his final 3 fights in the octagon. I'm not kidding you. It really is like final 3 fights. He plans on beating Dricus du Plessis. That's the one. Beating Khamzat Chimaev if he beats Robert Whitaker. So he thinks Khamzat's going to beat Robert. And get the rematch against Strickland. I will say this. I think that is the right move by Adesanya in my mind. If you want to like cement your legacy, you kind of have to get that Strickland fight back. So we're probably not going to see an Adesanya-Pereira fight. I think they really are going to be doing Pereira versus Jones. I think that's how it's going to play out. And we could see a scenario where we have Adesanya versus Strickland and have Pereira versus Jones to end off this year and to start off the next. I like that scenario. And this all hinges on Khamzat Chimaev beating Robert Whitaker. If Robert Whitaker beats Khamzat, the winner of Strickland versus Costa is going to be next. I'm sorry. Like, they will look past Robert Whitaker in favor of Strickland because they know that sells better. Okay? But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that really quick. Khamzat Chimaev's last chance at superstardom. I can see him maybe winning a title later on in his career, but like, let's be real here. If he loses to Robert Whitaker, dog, the stardom is pretty much over. Tell me what you think in the comment section down below. If you disagree with me, put it down there. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe. It means the most to me. And we're about to get to 10K by the end of the month. And with all that out of the way, adios, guys.